So now we arrive at the final moment of the game, where several conflicts in the story must be settled. First, the sectarian conflict within the members of the order itself must be settled before the birthing of God has any chance of occurring. Arguments about the nature of God and her plans invariably occur from the physical realm, since the levels of what we can be gleaned from peering into the spiritual realm vary greatly between individuals. On the physical level, the ego or the lower self has its own, albeit malformed, idea of God as well. The argument between Vincent and Claudia is less about individuals having a quarrel and more about each character representing in this final what each character represents in the final confrontation. Vincent is asserting his own egoic will over that of God, or Claudia believes is what she believes is the destiny of God. Of course, Claudia's own egoic motivations also lie beneath the surface. It's only that Vincent is admitting his more openly in this moment. This is a battle of the true believer versus the heretic, and Claudia, as a true believer, will do anything to uphold her faith. Unlike Vincent, the heretic, who criticizes Claudia's beliefs and blasphemes God, he is not a true believer because he tells Heather to kill Claudia, but he is unwilling to take matters into his own hands, instead trying to manipulate others into doing things for him. If you want to do something right, you got to do it yourself. After stabbing Vincent in the back, Claudia confirms to Heather that she has been manipulated all along by her lower instincts, primarily those being hatred, fear, and revenge. The way to enslave humanity has always been through the manipulation of the lower instincts, instincts which predictably drive behavior relating to our survival. This nefarious and destructive tactic has been working overtime in our world as of late, and it's really quite sickening. Since Claudia has no spiritual hold over Heather, she must resort to controlling her through her animal instincts. While the circumstances of today's world are noticeably different, the very same manipulation of your survival instincts are how millions of people are made to fall in line and do what they are told. Claudia's question about clinging to this corrupt world gives us insight into her own way of seeing the world. She infers that the God responsible for this world has somehow made a mistake in creating it. She professes to understand the mind of God. If Claudia believed in the God of this world, she would have searched for answers as to why the world is the way it is. But she does no such thing. Instead, she desires to bring about the birth of another God into this world so as to fix what is broken and restore it to paradise, to the paradise that is supposed to be in her mind. Claudia's own egoic delusion of what God should be and how God should act incites Heather's response to such madness by saying she would rather go to hell than live in Claudia's deranged world. Vincent reminds Heather about the seal of Metatron. She produces the talisman from her pocket, but looks rather puzzled as to what exactly she's supposed to do with it. Unlike the Floros with Harry Mason, which actually does do something, the seal of Metatron seems to be completely useless. This is because power is derived from the wielder, not from the object itself. Claudia knows it's not going to work because Heather was lured into this dark ceremony through her base animal instincts of hatred and fear. Unlike her adopted father, who wielded the Floros with a pure heart, to believe an object like the seal has an inherent power is to misunderstand its purpose. Of course, one's intentions matter not in terms of the physical realm, which reside at the level of effects. Heather ingests the aglaophotis as Claudia looks on with a bewildered expression. Claudia's plan is beginning to unravel right before her eyes in a way which she did not expect. Oftentimes in our own lives, having been led down a dark path, there always seems to be an unexpected avenue from which we may vanquish the forces of evil and find redemption in the last possible moment. And it matters not how far down the dark path we may have traveled, if, in the end, we do what's right. The aglaophotis causes Heather to vomit up the fetus of God right there inside the church. Claudia, being the true believer that she is, proceeds to consume the regurgitated remains of God in a desperate attempt to save her dream from falling apart. I guess you can figure out here who is pro-choice and who is pro-life. What a wild scene this is, and it's definitely exploring artistic expression to its fullest extent here. I always wondered why Claudia didn't decide to birth God herself in the first place. I mean, if you want something done right, you kind of have to do it yourself. The next moment, Claudia is taken down into the depths by what appears to be Valtiel, which is another clear indication that he is Lord of the Underworld. It seems that Claudia has failed to use Heather or Alessa as the conduit by which to deliver God into this world, which means at this point that all bets are off, and whatever happens from this moment will likely be very unpredictable. Perhaps Claudia sold her soul to Valtiel in exchange for assistance in helping to lead Heather through the dark ceremonies of the other world and into the hands of the Order. Also, you should notice the halo of the sun positioned over the painting which depicts the moon. This appears at the beginning of the game and now appears again at the end, indicating that the ceremony is nearing completion. Of course, something has gone horribly wrong, since it was Heather who was supposed to be taken through this hole in the floor in the first place. And in classic Silent Hill fashion, Heather must enter the abyss into the most terrifying way possible. The notion of jumping into a hole, especially one in a bathroom, has great significance in Japanese folklore. It's exactly why there's so much hole jumping in Silent Hill in the first place. Heather hasn't given up on her vow to avenge the death of her father. She will stop at nothing to see Claudia getting the punishment that she deserves. The hole itself may have been made to resemble the destroyed feminine reproductive organs of this, aborted God birth ceremony, given that the fetus of God was so abruptly ejected from Heather's body. Following Claudia, Heather inadvertently completes the dark ceremony, although not quite in the way that was in accordance with Claudia's plans. Here at the end of the game, we are shown Valtiel placing what appears to be a veil of flesh over the head of a female figure, a figure which bears a striking resemblance to Alessa Gillespie. This covering of the face of a miscarried god symbolizes that this deity has been transformed into yet another monster of human invention. In fact, all of the monsters in Silent Hill resemble human beings for this very reason. Man is indeed an animal and can be easily ruled by his bestial nature. Just as Claudia is transformed into another monster of the other world, perhaps a demigod if you like, Heather is drawn into this very same realm by her hatred and her quest for revenge. After the battle, Heather grieves the death of her father. In the next scene, she goes back to Douglas, who is waiting in the amusement park. Heather left the battle transformed, announcing to Douglas that she wishes to use her real name given by her father. From this point on, Cheryl Mason is no longer hiding, and in her loss has been given another chance with Douglas in her life. Douglas has been given another chance as well. A great transformation has occurred for both characters. And so, as the very last scene of Silent Hill 3 fades to black, we hear the theme from the first Silent Hill game playing, which brings the story full circle and makes me really wonder what that statement at the beginning of the first Silent Hill game really means. The fear of blood tends to create fear for the flesh. Now, how I interpret this statement is that the fear of blood refers to the recognition of one's mortality and its direct conflict with our survival instincts. In other words, the dual nature of man as both an animal, yet something more. We're the only creature that is aware of our own ultimate demise. So, the hidden and the revealed, or the duality of the spirit and the manifest. To create fear for the flesh means that our recognition that we must die one day strikes fear in this mortal coil of our existence, which is felt throughout the body and the flesh.